Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Films. My name is Alan, and today I want to continue our How to Survive series with probably one of the coolest battles I've seen in recent years, the invasion of Normandy in Edge of Tomorrow. Not to be confused with the actual invasion of Normandy during World War II. That was done by real people who were just heroic at another level. I could never imagine myself having the courage to do something as crazy as that. Although I just started watching The Man in the High Castle, which shows a terrifying alternate reality where the Nazis and Japanese win the war and occupy America. It's given me second thoughts about risking your life for a greater cause. Anyway, Edge of Tomorrow is more like an origin story for how Tom Cruise was granted blood magic by Scientology, which allows him to never die. That's why he's a badass and doing crazy stuff all the time. Also, we talk about this a lot on our channel. There's something called method acting, and then there's Tom Cruise acting, which isn't acting but just real life. Everything in Tom Cruise movies are real, thanks to the power of Scientology. Anyway, with our intro out of the way, let's continue to the actual video. It will be separated into 4 segments. First, the background about the battle, then some information about the enemy combatants, then a breakdown of the equipment and training you'll need to survive, followed by what you actually need to do to survive. Let's begin. This section of the video is for all of you grunts who fall asleep at the briefing and then don't realize where they are and who they're shooting at when they finally get their ass kicked out of the dropship. I appreciate your carefree attitude, but please stop it now and listen up. The human mimic war starts in the future, in 2056, after a hostile alien species invades Earth. Remember kids, extraterrestrial aliens are always hostile, and those who try to connect with them and humanize them are betraying us all. Kill it with fire. The mimics arrive in a cluster of asteroids and mostly land in Western Europe, mostly in France. Human forces experience defeat after defeat in the face of this alien onslaught, forcing NATO, China, and Russia eventually to transform into the United Defense Force. Finally, humans are able to drop all of their petty differences and join together in a truly united humanity. Hashtag humanity first. This is basically the only good thing that ever happens when the aliens arrive and start eating our children. Like in Independence Day when the Iraqi and Israeli pilots joined forces. Brings tears to my eyes. At the end of the day, you guys all love Cuba, which is basically an Iraqi form of dumplings that is delicious. Israelis, Arabs, Muslims, Jews, we're all human beings and we all love dumplings. Just look at all the cultures in the world. There are all types of Asian dumplings. There's Polish dumplings, British dumplings, South African dumplings, North Korean dumplings, Jamaican dumplings, Jersey Shore dumplings, Spanish dumplings. The list just goes on. Anyway, despite humanity's newfound connection and realization that we can be united by food, the mimics were kicking our dumpling-eating asses into oblivion. Until that is, the Battle of Verdun occurs. Yes, the same Verdun that was the location for one of the most costly battles of World War I. The UDF were finally able to defeat the mimics in this battle because of 2 major reasons. Well, maybe 3 actually. One was the recent deployment of the combat jacket exoskeletons, and 2, Sergeant Rydavratsky went on a kill streak of about 1,000 mimics and was given the very fitting title of Angel of Verdun. Little did humanity know, the Angel of Verdun actually had found a cheat code and it basically allowed her to respawn every time she died. The mimics also wanted us to win this battle purposely because they wanted us to get overconfident and engage all of our forces in a ill-advised offensive. General Brigham, the commander of the UDF, falls right into this trap and launches an all-out cross-channel invasion called Operation Downfall. The goal is to retake France. Probably not the best name for an invasion. It's kind of foreshadowing a pretty big defeat. Probably should have called it Overlord 2 or something like that. But I guess that's what you get with General Brigham, who is actually the father of General Hux, their military family not really known for their brilliance. Another interesting fact is Operation Downfall is actually the name of the planned invasion of the Japanese mainland, which thankfully never had to happen. One of the reasons why the UDF wanted to launch Operation Downfall was to give the Russians and Chinese forces some relief on the Eastern Front. I know this is starting to sound a lot like World War II, but remember, we're not just facing goose-stepping, sexually confused fascists, we're actually facing an existential threat to all of humanity, so pay attention. The goal of Operation Downfall was to establish a beachhead by using a massive infantry-led invasion to retake the Normandy beach area. Thousands of quad tilt rotors would drop thousands of combat jacket-equipped soldiers in your classic human wave frontal assault. As Dr. Carter, a mimic specialist, once explained, the mimics were basically the perfect world-conquering organism. They lay dormant in asteroids for God knows how long until they ran into a planet full of life forms and then just took over. Although that does seem a bit random and a little bit too 40K universe for me. It's because the galaxy is massive, and if there is life out there, it's most likely pretty spread out. So in my opinion, I think the mimics had to specifically aim at Earth, or at least guide themselves towards a planet that had life on it. Otherwise, the mimics would just be constantly floating into black holes and stars and all that other junk. It's hard to describe what exactly a mimic is. The best term to use would be shapeshifter. If you've played games like Prey recently, you'll know what I mean. The mimic bodies are made of these kind of moving coils of particles that seem to be constantly changing and flexing. That is, if you're fast enough to track their movement with your eyes. They move at inhuman speeds and are incredibly powerful. They can easily rip a man and an exoskeleton in half. So they're definitely strong and fast enough to move in close and get that melee kill on you almost every time. And yes, this movie is based on Japanese manga, which is why they have tentacles. If you aren't familiar with Japanese art forms, I definitely recommend you guys check it out. It's completely unique and very different from anything we have here in the United States. And I think because the Japanese are historically an island people, their numerous encounters with sea monsters have given their culture an underlying fear and fascination with tentacles. Also, some mimics could fire projectiles, which helped them defend against larger vehicles and aerial attacks. Killing the mimics usually required a massive amount of kinetic force, either through the use of traditional firearms or explosives, and in the Angel of Verdun's case, a giant buster sword. You know what, before we continue, I really have to say this, we definitely need to see Edge of Tomorrow 2. I need more of this. A lot more of this. Anyway, there are 3 mimic types that we know of. First, the drone mimic, which is by far the most common variant. It's hard to say how large it is because it's constantly shifting in size, but let's just say it's in between the size of a large lion and a smart car. The drones mainly use their tentacles to kill their foes, but they also can fire projectiles out of their backs. They seem animalistic in nature, but are quite intelligent. During the invasion of Normandy beach, several of them have dug themselves into bombed-out craters where they waited to ambush UDF soldiers who took cover in those craters. Aside from their constantly moving exteriors, they also had a reddish glow inside, which actually gave them away at night. When they are killed, their entire body petrifies and the glow goes away. Next, we're going to be talking about the very rare alpha mimic. According to Dr. Carter, 1 in 6.18 million mimics were actually an alpha variant. They were much larger than the drone, roughly the size of a bus, and terrifying to look at. Besides being a lot larger and more terrifying than the average drone, the Alpha played an important part in the Mimic army and served as the eyes and ears for the Omega Mimic. Anytime an Alpha Mimic was killed, something in their blood allowed them to revert time back to an earlier date and still retain all of their knowledge of what happened. This means that they will know about the enemy's movements and actions should the mimics be defeated in one way or another. When humans like Rita or Cage get exposed to this blood, it burns them like acid, killing them, but it also gives them this power to revert time as well. And as long as they don't lose their blood without dying, like with a blood transfusion, they'll have that power forever. Now, there seems to be only one Omega Mimic in every invasion, and they basically are the hive mind that controls everything. The Omega has the ability to reset time, so every time it fails, it can just revert time and try a new battle tactic until it wins. It's kind of like me when I'm playing XCOM. I know that the final mission to the alien main base is going to be hard, but I've been through so much with Dolph Lundgren and Bruce Willis to just leave them behind. The Omega is basically just a giant glowing blob. It's well hidden, but ultimately defenseless. Kill it and you win the war, but if you want to survive, don't volunteer to kill it. Let Tom Cruise do it. Now, usually there's a lot of things to talk about when it comes to this section, but if you're in the UDF and you're in the infantry combat jacket, it's basically the only thing you really need to worry about. Seriously, besides the quad tilt rotors, there are almost no other vehicles in sight during the Battle of Normandy. No tanks, no giant mechs, no artillery, no anything. But in truth, the combat jackets are pretty awesome and they can do a lot. For one, it seems like Elon Musk has figured out how to make electric batteries not suck by 2050. And we as human beings have basically mounted almost every weapon imaginable to this gigantic exoskeleton platform. On your right wrist, most suits have a modified FN SCAR heavy variant assault rifle, which has a grenade launcher attached below it. Then on your left hand, you have a triple-barreled anti-armor cannon, along with a grenade launcher and an auto cannon mounted on struts on your shoulders. Weapons Cons aside, the best part of a combat jacket is it gives the wearer increased mobility and strength. This allows them to survive jumps from extreme heights, pick up large objects, run and jump faster and further, but unfortunately at the Battle of Normandy, these suits still seem kind of new, and most of the UDF soldiers aren't even aware of how capable their suits are, and are just kind of using them as weapons carriers. If you want to survive this crazy war, definitely find some time to train on how to use this suit until it becomes second nature, because mobility is key in this battle, and that suit will keep you safe. From an armor standpoint, the combat jackets have very little protection, especially against projectiles or stabby tentacles. Now, there are some heavier variants of the combat jacket, but I argue that the mimics were so powerful that dodging their attacks is a much better alternative. There were some upgraded suits that had really cool weapons on them. For instance, one suit would replace the Scar H on your wrist and replace it with something known as a dual angel railgun. Don't know what it is, but it sounds awesome. Remember, the more firepower, the better in this scenario, as long as it doesn't slow you down. Shapeshifters are great at absorbing damage, so try to hit them with something with a lot of damage. Look, this entire battle is basically an ambush. Like, the mimics know you're coming, and there's basically no way to really survive long term. You just have to survive long enough so that Tom Cruise can destroy the Omega, which will reset everything, which then means the battle will never happen, which means you don't have to worry about surviving anyway. But then we wouldn't have a video, so we're just gonna tell you what to do anyway. First, don't be afraid of heights. Be fully aware of how to disengage your suit from its berth while you're in the quad tilt rotor. I would say try to be the closest man to the jump door, but in this case, the floor just drops out, so you're all very close. Do not hesitate when that happens, because your suit is only designed to absorb impacts from certain directions, and that does not include the ship exploding in your face. Once you make it to the ground, remember saving Private Ryan and get off the beach. 1, because there is no cover, and 2, the mimics have prepared some really good air defenses, which means there's going to be a lot of debris falling around you. Now, as we mentioned before, there are going to be a lot of mimics in these bombed out craters all around you, and should you go into one of these craters for cover, I recommend you use some explosives to make the foxhole deeper, and also to draw any mimics that might be hiding there. Since mimics are mostly melee fighters, try to always keep distance between you and them. Most of the UDF soldiers don't seem to understand how to fully use their suit, but don't let their ignorance be your excuse, because excuses won't prevent you from dying. Learn how to create distance and constantly duck and weave while firing at the enemy's center mass. The Scar H has some great stopping power against humans, but it's a lot less powerful when you're using it against a mimic. With their constantly shifting molecular structure, it requires a little more than just bullets to take them down, usually. Instead, use the Scar H like how Muhammad Ali uses his jab. It's not designed to kill a mimic, but it'll keep it at bay and hopefully off balance. Once you get it stumbling around enough, line up the perfect shot with your heavier weapon and take it out. I don't recommend going all Angel Verdun on the mimics. Buster Swords are really cool back at the base when you're just strutting around with that thing like a badass, but once you're in the middle of a battle and you only have a giant sword on you, you're gonna regret it. I'm pretty sure Rita just got bored of not dying, so she decided to challenge herself by maxing out her melee skill tree. But if you don't have respawns and mimic blood in you, I definitely don't recommend going this route. Also, when fighting drones, keep in mind if they do fire projectiles at you, they have to be completely still when they're doing it. So if you do see a mimic become uncharacteristically still, most likely they're preparing to fire at you. And no, not even the heaviest armor can stop these rounds, so you can either take cover or try to blast it before it blasts you, although I don't recommend the latter. Now, if you do see an alpha, this will be the one time in this series I do recommend you strap on some claymores or C4 to your body and just try to give it a hug. If you can get that alien juice on you, you'll be good to go, and you won't need this guide at all. So there you have it, guys. That's a brief explanation on how you could survive the Battle of Normandy in the Edge of Tomorrow. It's also a brief explanation on why Scientology is such a powerful magic. Anyway, guys, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. My name is Alan, reminding you that life is a movie, and you are a protagonist.